Members, some time ago, a young man came to Tallahassee with ambition in his eyes. His very migration to Florida and to our great capital changed the face of Florida history. His arrival was literally on a path of rebellion against the dominant society of the day. This young man remade Tallahassee in a manner that would change it forever, or at least a couple of years. His allies would follow him to the ends of the earth, and his enemies feared him in an almost supernatural sense. At the end of this run, he became governor of this great state and opened a whole new world to our great state. That man, of course, was Hernando de Soto. And he set up a winter encampment in Tallahassee nearly 500 years ago, 473 to be exact. And you could visit his old home today, members. You just go down Lafayette and turn on DeSoto Park Drive. It's only a couple blocks from here. Nearly 500 years later, I arrived here in Tallahassee and unknowingly moved less than a mile away from my great ancestor in a humble apartment down the street. And thus a great circle of family history had been completed. I had been elected in a special election which ended during the last 2 weeks of session. Only on a few hours sleep, I was driven up to Tallahassee and stepped into the Capitol for the first time. When I arrived, I was whisked by then leader Gelber to then Speaker Marco Rubio's office for a special request that I be allowed on the floor to have my floor privileges before my victory had been certified. Having been afforded the same privilege, Rubio obliged, and for that I thank him. My speech was short, but I believe it instantly endeared me to the chamber. I said, "It's been a short election, but a long night, and I look forward to all of you," and then promptly left the well. Sometimes clarity and brevity are rewarded. In my tenure, I've been blessed to pass bills and to stop bills. As Democrats and Republicans, I encourage you all to do the same when the time comes. This is now my 6th session, and like my ancestor, Hernando de Soto, I too have ambition, but to run for the state senate rather than governor. But you never know. I would like to thank my constituents for believing in a starry-eyed young 29-year-old lawyer from Orlando. I'd like to thank my mom, Jean, and my dad, Lou, for having me, raising me, supporting me in my every endeavor. I'd like to thank the love of my life, my girlfriend, Amanda. I'd like to thank my law partners through the years, currently Lee Dura and Rick Calzada, as well as my former law partner, Adam Sudbury. Without their support back home, I would not be able to be here. I would also like to thank House staff, Durwood, Juicy, Sarah, the whole gang, excuse me. I'd like to thank the House staff. I would also like to thank my district assistants, Cecilia and Tracy Brooks, and my former district assistant, Alex Barrio. They have worked diligent to assist me in countless constituent needs. Lastly, I need to thank my legislative assistant, Christine Aleknovich. She has been there with me through the whole story, thick and thin, through triumph and defeat, and I wouldn't be able to be here without her. Thank you, Christine. I would like to leave you with 10 lessons I learned in the Florida House in no priority order. Lesson number 10, I learned from our speaker, Dean Cannon, which is to be punctual and attentive. It is hard to do anything in this process if you are late or you don't show up. For the record, Rep. Taylor and I have tallied this out. The speaker has gaveled on time all but once during his entire tenure, and that was only 1 minute late. That's impressive. Lesson number 9, I learned from my good friend and hermano, Louis Garcia, which is to have courage in this process and heart. He's the only Cuban Democrat in this House in an area where there aren't many, if not any, besides him. But rather than cower, he's gone on the floor every day and spoke with heart about what he believed is right. Your constituents will expect nothing less. Lesson number 8, I learned from the Colonel, from Representative Rich Glorioso, which is that integrity commands respect. I'd follow the Colonel into a battle any day because I have faith in his character. And for those of you who hope to lead this chamber one day, I hope you will take this lesson to heart in particular. Lesson number 7, I learned from our leader, Ron Saunders, that while we in this House are a sovereign legislative body enshrined in the Constitution, and that we should deliberate on our own accord here, only a fool ignores the business of the Senate. I've seen many members rail through controversial bills with glee in the chamber, only to be shocked to find their bill was a non-starter in the other chamber. The leader has worked both chambers masterfully for years. Lesson number 6, I learned from Representative Clay Ford, which is that wise words can turn the tide in this chamber. During the red light camera debate, the mood could have turned on a dime. There was much ado about privacy, nanny states, heck, even a quote from Ben Franklin, Rep. Gates. But Clay got up there and said, you know, members, I hear a lot of talk in here about rights, but I didn't know there was a fundamental right to run a red light and hit a bunch of school children. That was well said, Clay, and that changed the debate, ruled the day, and Floridians are alive and well because of it. Lesson 5 I learned from Representative Marty Kerr, which is that 9/10 of politics is presence. Marty walks doors during elections. Marty walks doors when there aren't elections, and his constituents love him for it. No matter what your votes are up here, whether your constituents agree with you or not, if you show up, you are 90% on your way to their vote. Lesson number 4 I learned from my seatmate, Dwayne Taylor, which is that life experience can be invaluable in this process, and you should embrace them. He brings to this chamber careers as a firefighter, city commissioner, even published author, and I've seen him wield this knowledge in many battles on pensions, fire safety, labor unions, and local government. While you shouldn't be afraid of treading new ground in this house, with turbulence on our heads, it sure helps to move into areas you know. Lesson 3 I learned from Representative Scott Randolph, which is to be bold. While I don't always agree with his method, he has produced some of the most cathartic moments in this chamber. Though it may bring discomfort, though you may lose some friends, sometimes this chamber needs a little shock now and again. And I promise you, you will return home a hero, and your constituents will celebrate you. And so that this is not too partisan, Leader Hadner had this, and I also see it in Representative Smith as well. Lesson number 2, I learned from Speaker-designate Will Weatherford, which is you need to do the right thing even when you have the power not to. The House maps bear this out. While I'm not necessarily endorsing them, even the Supreme Court has acknowledged they're far better than the Senate maps. The greatest virtue necessary for wielding great power is discretion, and you have shown that, sir. The last lesson I would like to impart to you is this. You all must harness an ancient wisdom in order to meet the challenges of our day. We all come to this chamber from different backgrounds, different stages of our life, in different areas. While these lessons will serve you well in this chamber, they are not enough, particularly with term limits. Know the history of the issues you're working on, know the history of our nation, and particularly know the history of our great state. The Spanish philosopher George Santayana once said, "Those who do not read history are doomed to repeat it. Those who fail to learn from the mistakes of their predecessors are destined to repeat them." And that is the most important lesson of all. It was my true pleasure to serve with all of you. Thank you.
Representative Soto, although he and I disagree on most things political, you, sir, have demonstrated a personal kindness to me in local issues of working together on stuff across the aisle, and I will miss serving with you very, very much. And just for the record, the only reason we were 1 minute late was because we were waiting for Representative Keir to deliver the invocation.